because I'm now going to moderate the next panel, which leads on from some of the highlights that Dr. Sebastian has come up with. We're going to look at some of the challenges that are focused by emergency response in the region. Okay, now there are specific challenges that we face in and around the GCC. One of them is the geography. How far apart are we at? Okay, so I'm going to ask to come to the stage, and I need to remember the name, so unless you're referring to my phone, I'm not being rude. There's Mezher Alqahtani, who's the advisor to the VP of Fire Protection of Saudi Aramco. Followed by Teren, the Head of Emergency Services for Serco Middle East. And Jacob Junge, who is Assistant Fire Chief, and that might be incorrect. I think there may have been a change to that, of GDC Middle East. So if they come to the stage, it'll be my pleasure to engage with them and discuss their experiences and our thoughts, and to give them a little bit of history about who they are, so it contextualises why we do what we're doing. So I'll start with the Terrence who's sitting down next to him.
I chose the wrong seat, obviously. No, so I'm Teren, I'm the Head of Emergency Services in the Middle East. So I work for a company called Serco, originally a UK company, but we have divisions all over the world. So my remit is anything to do with emergency services, be it pre-hospital care or fire and rescue services across all industries. So oil and gas, aviation, municipal, across Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So I look after our training academy in the UAE and also all of our support contracts.
So, was it?
Assalamu alaikum. Mezher Alqahtani, I'm working for Saudi Aramco Fire Protection. I joined the company in 1991 and all my career with the fire protection. I grew through all levels until I become a fire protection manager. Nowadays, I'm working for the vice president of the fire protection organization in the company as an advisor.
Sure, thank you very much. Not from another, just checking.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jacob Junge. Currently, I'm one of the assistant fire chiefs with GDC Middle East. I've been in the fire service for just over 20 years. I've been here in Riyadh for almost 9 years currently. And with GDC, we train the National Guard firefighters.
Okay, so as I alluded to, one of the big challenges we have is the geography and the widespread demographics of GCC, but specifically Saudi Arabia. So I'm going to ask you, Mezher, what do you see some of the geographical challenges are?
Okay, this is an excellent question. Actually, as you mentioned, Saudi Arabia is a very big, large country, and the challenges that we are facing is the scattered area and the difference in topographies. For example, the southern areas, mountains, and the opposite side is desert. And the challenges are various from emergency response point of view to handling, imminent risks that we expect on different sectors or different areas, whether from industrial or from, the natural crises like the flood, like the wildland fires.
Excellent. And again, I think that sort of captures where we want to go. So, Jacob, have you anything to add to this?
Yeah, as he said, this region is mostly desert, so we have to deal with extreme heat. So we need to make sure that we're protecting our apparatus against those, because it can decrease the life of our vehicles, which increases our maintenance of them. Also, I know we have flooding issues, wildland or wildfire issues. So I'm sure we're going to cover those here shortly.
Teren?
Thanks, guys. I think they're all very, very valid points. And I think the biggest thing for me around this topic is the growth trajectory of the kingdom and what it's had over the past few years. We had Khaled up here from Red Sea Global, and you talk about NEOM, you talk about the other giga projects. You're taking regional areas that have normally had a very low population, low density, and now we're trying to increase that population, increase the density, diversity of those locations at a very rapid rate. So how do we go about ensuring the protection of those communities and those growing communities from a national kind of perspective? That's kind of what I take out of that question.
I think that's perfect at the end of the day. The change in demographics, as you say, people are used to having a very low population density to a high population density. And as a student said about the build phase and the risk due to the build phase and construction phase, obviously with the giga projects, that's something that needs to be managed. So it leads me nicely on to really, how do you think or some of the resourcing challenges that throws at us, not just the physical resources with regards to the machinery, but actually the people resources as well? I'll start with you, Teren.
People-wise, and I can say this as a private service provider, it's tough, all right? You're competing in an environment that's expanding very rapidly. So the demand for firefighting staff across the entirety of the GCC is growing. So that pool of talent, if we talk about Saudi specifically and the requirements for NFPA qualifications, certifications, that pool of talent is quite small. Okay, if we talk about the way that Saudi looks to achieve the vision of the country and almost designing their own certification background and training background and requirements, you'd probably find that you open up that talent pool to a lot more candidates from around the world. And when you do things like that, you then bring in international best practice from different places, different parts of the world. So I think to match the growth trajectory of the country, probably some thought and some thinking around what is the certification requirements, what are the standards of the fire services across the country to enable to let the private sector and also let the government sector work in step with the trajectory of the country.
Mezher, how do you feel?
I feel on two sides, the public and the responder or the profession. My colleague covered the certification and the preparation for our responders, as well as the community awareness. There should be community awareness that help us when we respond to these challenges, that they don't make it so complicated for us as a responders. I give you an example. During the announcement that we received from the civil defense and from the forecast centers that there's heavy rain could be in this area, I still see people in the road. People are not taking this warning seriously, which make it so complicated for us as a responder to deal with and handle. So the awareness and education is very important, as well as the certification of our responder and their training.
I think you really identified a really essential part of any community expansion is understanding the risks they're exposed to. Risk awareness, risk appetite grows as we become more experienced. But if we don't experience those incidents very often, we don't understand what they are. Most people don't understand that water, even if it's only like 30 centimetres deep, if it's flowing at 10 kilometres an hour, how strong that is. Okay, and it carries people, carries cars, carries vehicles away, but they don't understand the risk. So education is really important, and something that's come through a lot of the presentations and discussions today is about educating our community about the risks that they're exposed to. What do you think about that, Jake?
Oh yeah, he mentioned community awareness. I think it's really important that the more remote locations of the country should have programs like CERT, the Community Emergency Response teams that help. They get basic training in disaster response and first aid. And I know we use that in the United States. Also, volunteer fire departments. But to Teren's point with certifications and training, we need to make sure that those remote communities are getting the same amount and same quality of training that the more urban areas like Riyadh, Jeddah are getting as well.
Totally agree with you. I always like to look at a thing called the 4 stages of competence, and you can apply that to risk as well. So when I first start somewhere, I'm an unknown, I'm unconscious, incompetent. I don't know what I don't know, but I'm striving to become level 4, conscious, competent. And the SURF-P, I did a fair amount of work with developing some of those out in America. So I understand how useful they are to the community, especially in natural disaster times. Fire, a little bit more difficult to keep them up to skills, but the skills that we need to educate them with natural disasters, yes, we can force multiply our emergency responders by having that community engagement. Teren, what do you think?
No, I think the power of community is a massive thing. Obviously, I'm from Australia, where we utilise or have utilised community to try and affect change or try to bolster a national's preparedness or the nation's preparedness to respond to crisis. Volunteer fire brigades, state emergency services, where they specialise in water rescue and flood rescue and things like that. Is there a position in Saudi Arabia to maybe look at community outreach programs like that, where you empower the community to be able to react if something does happen initially, while they wait for the authorities to arrive?
Totally agree with you. And if you look at urban search and rescue, it was touched by our very first presentation this morning. Urban search and rescue, 90% of rescues are performed by the community within the first hour, before the responders, but the specialist responders get it. So the SURF-P, the community involvement in that sort of thing is really important. But from my perspective, is how do we resource them? How can we train them? How can we support them? So how do you think that would go from your perspective?
Well, community involvement starts from the early stages, where we identify risks and plan for it. And before I answer the question or discuss it, we have to remember the 5 P's. The preparation, the planning and great preparation produce great performance. Poor preparation produce bad performance. So the community is part of us as a responder, and we have to engage them from the first stage, involve them in the education and awareness, involve them in urban search rescue, volunteerism programs, elevated within the community. So this will help a lot to ensure that they are well bonded to the fire and emergency response organizations.
It's almost as if you'd read my article, because the heading in on page 26 says poor preparation, prepared for poor performance. So it's almost as if you read my article with that. So
I've read it.
Thank you. So, but again, one of the challenges, if we start involving different organisations, and Teren, we touched on it quite a lot when we had our informal discussion, was about commonality of terminology, speaking the same language.
This is one of the incident command system principles. Common terminologies is very important, and we will come to it in terms of collaboration and coordination. You know, whether nationally or internationally, they have to speak the same language. Otherwise, there will be no cooperation, and everybody will work against, each other.
I couldn't have put that any better. I really couldn't. If we don't speak the same language, but some of the challenges in this region are the multiple cultures, the multiple international people that are here. So not only are we trying to get a commonality in terminology for our incident command system, we have to try and find a way of translating that as well. Teren, what do you think?
No, I think Mezher's hit the nail on the head. You look at, once again, I step back to the growth trajectory of KSA at the moment, where it's going, giga projects, everything that is happening in this region at the moment, you have an influx of people from around the world. So if the country were to try and gather all of that up together at some point and say, well, we're growing very rapidly, we need to address how the nation would respond, or how would multiple agencies from private to government to giga projects to everybody else interact together at an incident, a protracted incident, say if something was to happen at Aramco and there's private fire services nearby, is there some form of MOU? Is there a commonality between the two of them? Is the ICS, is it purely NIMS is everybody only ever working off NIMS because one site is going to be different to the next site all the time? And basically having, is there the potential for a collaborative working group at that higher level to ensure that that is thought through and that is put into place with the private and with the government sectors?
I think that's an absolute superb opening, because again, right from Jacob talking about the effect on the appliances, etc., Mezher and yourself talking about collaboration and the shared experience, the shared resourcing, okay, about specialist resources that the civil defence may not have, but because of the risk profile within an organisation, you have had. The collaboration, the memorandum of understanding is probably something we need to explore. What do you think from your perspective, Mezher?
Regard to the collaboration?
Yeah.
Collaboration is a key and very important among the area or even beyond your country. Having, for example, National Crisis Management Center or having GCC Crisis Center to talk to each other before the situation or the emergency, and making sure that the collaboration is not among communication only and between those who are sitting on these centers. No, they have to disseminate and making sure that there is experiential training or learning is done by those who really will handle this emergency. And as a firefighter, that we have 3 levels, which is the fire ground operation and emergency management, the fire ground, the tactical level where we make tactics, and the strategies. The strategies, here is the key, for collaboration. If we have a good strategy ahead of the game, everybody can ensure that sustainability is there, the business continuity is there, and everyone on the ground or in the emergency can do whatever is requested from them or required.
Excellent. Jacob?
Yeah, I believe collaboration is very important. We need to make sure that different agencies have mutual aid agreements, especially in the smaller areas. If a remote area has a large scale incident and they don't have the ability to adequately resource that incident, they're going to have to call up their mutual aid from the bigger city and properly resource that. So it's definitely an important option.
Teren, just to finally close that one out.
I think, I'm echoing some of the stuff from the earlier panels around understanding of risk. So risk evolution throughout the stages of, say, a project, or in this case, the stages of the country. So now we're getting to a point within the country where the risk now is not just the first responder. The risk is now how do we respond as a whole to an incident to minimize any kind of impact to community or people or asset or national infrastructure for that matter. So yeah, I think it's very valid to have that kind of conversation at some higher level to say that to match the growth of the nation, we need to make sure that everybody's lockstep moving in the right direction.
Agree.
One thing to add in regard to the collaboration, it's not limited to organizations that they respond. Also, there can be a center among the country or the area with academic, research centers that they will help us, to predict challenges that we are not used to. I assure you, nowadays we have to put flood in our, registered risks. Before we are not experiencing such, weather conditions. Wildland fires in the southern area, we experienced number of wildland fires. So collaboration is not only limited to communication or meeting or mutual aid, signatures. No, it should go beyond that to ensure that our responder, when they respond, they know each other. And I give you an example. We in Saudi Aramco have a great mutual aid agreement with the civil defense kingdom-wide. And our people are periodically conduct joint exercise drills and conduct periodical, meetings to understand each other and what are the resources, compatibilities between equipment as well. They have different fittings than us. So it's a great concept that everybody should put in mind.
And it's almost as if you can read my mind, which is quite pleasing. Because you mentioned earlier about experiential learning, experiential training. And I'm just going to close out with a statement and then we'll open for questions because I know we're pushing on time. All that we've talked about here, the only way we can take it forward to make sure the collaboration works, the joined up working works, is by training together and a willingness to train.